Welcome to No Broken Legs, Fantasy Focus for Week 1. I am Evan Belfiore. Joining me on the phone is Jimmy Champ. Jimmy, it is a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and we are just chomping at the bits for some football.
Yeah, we just got done with our Pick'ems pod. I loved that. Now it's time to talk about some fantasy. Super excited to get this season started, and I do think, man, there are some guys in this league that get just some juicy matchups for Week 1, so I'm excited to talk about those.
All right, and just real quick, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about people like Patrick Mahomes, Dalvin Cook. You drafted them high, you're going to start them. So we're going to look more in the middle to try and find some sleepers for your daily fantasy, or maybe help you try and help you fix a lineup issue. Maybe you have 2 or 3 guys that you're looking to start for one spot. So Jimmy, the first place we're going to look at is running back. Fantasy running backs. It's a position that has changed immensely over the years. There's a lot of guys at the top that are really good that are no-brainer starts. Who is out there for our listeners to look at that's more middle of the pack?
So here are some guys. So I think this is for season-long and DFS. You could start Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon with the utmost confidence. Detroit sucks, and Kyle Shanahan is not going to expose Jimmy Garoppolo against a bad defense. These guys are going to get a ton of carries, yards, and they should both get in the end zone. Like, I love Mostert and Sermon this week. I think they're must-starts. If you have them on your lineup and you've got – I can't even imagine what you would have at your running backs and your flex to not start these two guys. Fire them both up with confidence. I also really like Nyheim Hines and Indy. I think they're going to be chasing all game from Seattle, and they don't have a lot of playmakers, a lot of really great skill position guys. So I think Nyheim Hines, especially if you're in full PPR, but even half PPR, Nyheim Hines is going to be great. And if you are on the belief that the Texans are the worst team in the NFL, James Robinson for Jacksonville is a great play. And then our hometown boy, I think Kareem Hunt is a great play this week. Most weeks I think he's normally going to be a flex, but I think you can play him as an RB2 this week. I think he's going to get a lot of run against the Chiefs. I love Kareem Hunt this week. He should be able to get you a touchdown and a lot of touches in half PPR.
That is something that I'm really going to look at with the Browns on their offense is how often do we see Chubb and Hunt on the field together, and how much is Hunt used? Because I'd really like to see them use the two of them more in tandem so that you're getting 15 to 20 touches for Chubb, 10 to 15 for Hunt. I think that's a great place for the Browns to be in.
Yep, I agree.
All right, moving out to wide receiver, we have a lot of big names that look like they're going to put up a lot of big points, but who's flying under the radar at the wide receiver position, Jimmy?
So the thing with wide receiver is you want to look for games with big over-unders because that means more touchdowns, and you want to look for guys on teams versus bad defenses. You can, in my opinion, you can play Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson versus Cincy. I think they're both stardoms.
I agree with that. Those are good. I agree that those are good starts.
Yeah, Robert Woods, he's drafted a little bit out of the top 15. He's known better in the fantasy football podcast world as Bobby Trees. I think he's a great start this week against Chicago. Chicago does not have good secondary anymore, and I think they're going to get abused by the Rams. We talked about him a little bit during our pick'ems. This is a Robbie Anderson, Sam Darnold revenge game. I love it. I think this will be one of the better fantasy games of Robbie Anderson's career. Fire him up. And then these two they're probably touchdown dependent, but I kind of like Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel in San Francisco because if they have to throw the ball at all, it's going to be screen passes and quick slants to those two guys. I don't think Jimmy G is going to try to push it down the field much, so I can see them getting you a lot of points in half PPR this week. And then the last one, I think he's a must-start, is Laviska Shenault for Jacksonville versus the Texans. I do think the Texans are going to win the game, but I don't think they have anybody that can cover Shenault. I like Shenault more than the other two wide receivers, more than Chark and Marvin Jones Jr. this week. So that's where I'm looking at wide receiver.
I'm actually starting Shenault in the one league that I'm in as my flex. So I like to hear that. I also like that you brought up Deebo Samuel. When he was healthy last year, Kyle Shanahan loves coming up with ways to get him the ball. Just however he does it, it seems like they always try to run about 2 or 3 end arounds or reverses, and then he'll get another 2 or 3 screens on top of that. I like Deebo Samuel as a play every week too.
Yeah, I think those are good plays. And then the only other two, if for some reason in week one you need a little bit of a dart throw, my favorite of the rookie wide receivers, I love Devonta Smith for Philly. I think he's going to have a big week against Atlanta. And then much like with Nyheim Hines, the Colts got to throw the ball somewhere. They should go a lot of passes to Michael Pittman Jr., so you could fire him up as well.
All right, moving over to quarterback, we saw Dak Prescott and Tom Brady put up big numbers in their first game. Who out there is going to put up a big week that we're not expecting?
So I think one of the biggest weeks, I think you can play either one of them. If you don't have one of those top quarterbacks, you can look at Jalen Hurts and Matt Ryan. I think they're both going to put up a lot of points this week. If you drafted Trevor Lawrence to play quarterback for your team, not just as like a end of the year thing, like you thought he could be productive for you, then you should probably play him this week because he's not going to play too many worse defenses than the Houston Texans. I love Baker Mayfield. I think Baker has probably got 3 touchdowns in him this week. I don't think the Chiefs are going to let Nick Chubb dominate them in the red zone. I think they're going to have to throw the ball to get in the end zone, and I think Baker is going to be up to that task, and he's going to be able to give you a lot of touchdowns and a lot of yards this week. And then my other sleeper for quarterback is my man Sam Darnold. If there was ever a game for him to get up for, to focus and be his best, it would be this one. And the Jets do not have a good pass defense. They're okay up front, but in the back end, they're not very good. So I think you could actually play Sam Darnold with confidence if you're in a 2 QB league or you waited on quarterback or you've got somebody, maybe you drafted Justin Herbert. You don't want to start him against Washington. I think you could fire up somebody like Sam Darnold this week.
I also like Kirk Cousins against the Bengals defense.
Oh, yeah, great play there, too. Yes.
All right, let's move on. One of the most confounding fantasy positions is tight end, and Jimmy, my motto in fantasy is I want one of the 3 or 4 best tight ends.
Yep.
Who, if for our listeners that weren't able to grab, Travis Kelce, Kittle, or even like a Pitts or a Waller, who's out there for them to start to get some productivity out of a position that a lot of times there's teams out there that are just throwing a guy hoping he gets 3 or 4 catches.
Yeah, I like Logan Thomas in Washington. I can see Fitz maybe not trying to get deep down the field early to McLaurin. Maybe they're just trying to move the chains. I think Logan Thomas could get a lot of catches there in Washington. He may be even able to kind of separate himself in that second tier this year, more towards the top of it than the middle. Like I said, I think the Atlanta-Philly game, there's going to be a lot of points. So obviously, if you drafted Pitts, start him this week for sure. But I actually like Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz for Philly. I think they could both do some stuff this week. I think this game in Chicago is going to start the awesome relationship between Tyler Higbee and Matt Stafford. I can see Tyler Higbee getting in the end zone. As I've talked about for the last couple of weeks, I love Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry in New England. I think they're back to their 2 tight end scheme that they love and they do really well. And if they're healthy, Jonnu and Hunter Henry are 2 really good tight ends. And then if you want to go if you need to get a little deeper, Jordan Akins for the Houston Texans just finds ways to catch touchdowns. He may give you 2 catches for 4 yards and a touchdown, but that's like 12 points. And that ain't bad at the tight end position this year. So I like that. I do want to say, I think you need to fade Mike Gesicki and TJ Hawkinson at tight end this week. If you don't have another option, I guess you got to roll with them, but I think they're both going to struggle.
You had mentioned earlier that you think Baker Mayfield's going to have to throw. Sorry. You had mentioned earlier that you think the Browns are going to have to throw in the red zone. Does that make Austin Hooper a play at all?
I want to say yes, but I would like to see week 1 how the personnel looks.
Yeah, they just did not use the tight end much last year, regardless of who it was. And I feel like that's a wrinkle that they're going to need to I think that's a wrinkle they need to add to the offense if the Browns are really going to take a step up and become an elite offense. They have to get something out of Hooper.
Yeah, I mean, for what they're paying Austin Hooper, he needs to catch touchdowns. But it looked like they seem a little committed to Njoku being on the field as well. But also, it wouldn't surprise me when they got in the red zone if they spread it out with Kareem Hunt in the backfield. That wouldn't surprise me either. I'm okay. Like, if you have Austin Hooper, please play him this week because the Browns are going to throw the ball a lot, I believe. But like I said, I'm not targeting him yet because I want to see what the red zone packages look like.
Very fair. Any last fantasy thoughts for this week, Jimmy?
No, just, you know what? This week, week 1, just start the guys that you drafted to start, right? Like, start the guys that you think are going to be good. If you think there's somebody out there on your wire that's good, because there are some guys that have some rough matchups this week. So if one of these guys that we talked about is available and you've got somebody you're not sure you're going to play, go ahead and pick these guys up to try to steal a win in week 1, because the guy you're playing doesn't really know what his lineup's going to be this year either. I'm excited. We got DFS starting back up. We've got yearly, which I prefer yearly to DFS, but there's a lot of great value buys in DFS this week. If you are playing DFS, man, get Travis Kelce in your lineup. That's the one I would say. Every lineup I'm making is focused around Travis Kelce, Raheem Mostert, and Calvin Ridley, and then fill everything else how you want. But I believe that's the chalk this week at running back, tight end, and wide receiver.
Yeah, the Browns historically have been terrible at guarding tight ends, and even teams that are good at defending tight ends give up 120 yards to Kelce. So Kelce's definitely somebody to build your lineup around. I will also say that I did a free best ball league just to kind of play around with it. I'll talk about it maybe more as the season goes on, what I'm figuring out in terms of the best strategies for best ball. It seems easy, just pick the best guys and then whatever they do, but there seems to be a little bit more to it, and I tried to draft some guys that are more boom bust just to get an idea of how it works, and we'll report that out to you listeners if you're interested in such things.
Fabulous, brother.
Well, Jimmy, thank you for rounding up the fantasy football for week 1.
Man, I love it. I'm glad we're here. It's time. It doesn't look like COVID's slowing us down this year. So at least not too much, and it's our favorite time of the year. So I'm hoping to see some big boom games this first week. There's some really great skill players playing some really bad teams, and I think you're going to see some guys that are going to be overvalued. And then also, there are also a fantasy strategy to look at these first couple weeks. Like, even in pay leagues, you might be playing with guys who pay a lot of attention early, and then they're going to tail off later in the year. Like, if there's somebody who you think is going to have a good season but has a bad first couple weeks because of his matchup, offer a silly trade. It might be a trade you might not accept, but they might accept it because, oh man, week 1 I lost because this guy sucks. Oh, this person will take him from me. Offer the trade. See what you can do. That's what makes fantasy football fun, is trying to make the trades and improving your team every week. So that's about all I got on fantasy this week.
For Jimmy Champ, I am Evan Belfiore, and we are No Broken Legs.